This is about seeing clearly and supporting your child and yourself from this place of curiosity and figuring out how to connect and using that sensory lens to help do that. Understanding the sensory system changed the way I practiced as a therapist, and understanding the sensory system in the new container of motherhood changed the way I live. And living it out with my daughter and seeing how having that unique mother-child dynamic.
Hey mama, are you feeling like you're walking on eggshells around your little one? Does every day feel like a battleground from breakfast to bedtime? You're not alone. If meltdowns, sensory sensitivities, and communication challenges are turning your days upside down, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sensory Savvy Mama, the podcast for moms raising neurodivergent little ones. I'm your host, Victoria, and I get it. I've been there. The endless research, the frustrating appointments, the feeling like no one understands what you and your child are going through. Here, we ditch the cookie cutter advice and embrace the power of understanding your child's unique sensory needs within the context of your family. We'll dive into practical strategies, expert insights, and real-life stories to help you create a calmer, more connected family life. Because you deserve to feel empowered, not exhausted. Let's ditch the overwhelm and discover the joy of raising a sensory kid in a neurodiverse family. You ready? Let's go.
Hey mama, welcome back to the Sensory Savvy Mama podcast. I'm Victoria, your host. If you've been following along in the month of July, you've heard some powerful conversations with other moms raising neurodivergent kiddos. But today, and for the month of August, I want to kind of circle back to our roots and to the foundation that this space was built on: clarity, connection, and deep nervous system safety. This is a solo episode, part 1 of 4, in a series I designed to reconnect us with the why behind your child's behavior and how it makes daily life feel much more possible. As an occupational therapist, traditionally trained and then taking more classes in sensory integration, when families understand their neurodivergent child's unique way of sensory processing, that neuro-signature, that personality of how they're processing the world around them, that knowing can have the biggest, most profound impact on the quality of your day-to-day life. In my work as an OT, and especially in creating the Edison Collective, one of the things that has been really powerful in collaborating with families is really getting a good and clear understanding on that child's nervous system and how they're processing in the day-to-day activities. When we see a child who's really struggling, we can start to break that down and get really curious and figure out, why is this happening? What is going on underneath here? What is at the root of all this? Understanding the sensory system is always where I like to start with families, because everything builds on that. Their motor planning skills, their language development, their visual perception, their ability to understand social interactions, that all comes from that foundation of the sensory system and builds on those skills. So if you're starting off with a sensory system that's processing things very differently from what's expected or anticipated or from what is happening in the people around you, then that can be incredibly disorienting as a parent. Wait a minute, what is going on here? But also for the child, why is my response being perceived this way? Or why is it triggering such a reaction from the people around me, from my teachers or my parents or my siblings? When we have lived accounts of lived experiences, those are so important to listen to and read. And the other thing is to develop a communication system for your child, even if they're not speaking consistently, fluidly, having multiple avenues for them to be able to communicate with you, and knowing that at the base of everything, behavior is communication. When we understand that, then our child's behavior doesn't seem so random. So I want to go back for a little bit and talk about when I was a new OT before becoming a mom. I saw this pattern of this type of mom who would come into the clinic completely burned out. Her life revolved almost entirely around her child's needs. And maybe there were other children in the family or a spouse or partner, but those were accessories to this one child who was in this state needing high support. And this mom was almost invisible as her own entity. Her entire being was now oriented around this child. I remember watching it happen. And one mom in particular, still, I have dreams about her. But I felt such devastation in my heart for this mom because she was doing everything you could think of, everything that modern culture and society was telling her, mainstream parenting books. But she had a neurodivergent child. And so everything had to be adapted or have an addendum to it for her child, but there wasn't any of that. And nobody had talked to her about the sensory system. She had no idea what was going on. She was in so much pain over trying to help her child, who was lovely most of the time until she wasn't. When you get dismissed from daycares and preschools and people tell you they don't know what to do with your child, that is so hard to take as a mom. And that ignites so many things in us. And as much as I loved working with children, I could not ignore these moms sitting in the lobby. They were holding all the pieces together as best as they could. They were ashamed that their child had been dismissed or was considered too difficult. And I just wanted to go sit with her and walk with her through her child's sensory system and help translate what she was seeing in everyday exhausting life into patterns and signals that she could interpret and know what to do with. I wanted her to feel supported and co-regulate with her in a way that she had been doing for her child, because she has been carrying so much for everyone else. And if that's you listening to this today, I'm just sending you the biggest of hugs and let you know that I would love to sit down with you. It was moms like this and my own experience as a new mom that led me to create the Edison Collective and subsequently this podcast. When families understand the sensory system and how their child is processing it, unique to them, what that neuro-signature is, because this is a collaborative thing, we see tangible shifts happen in 1 to 2 sessions, not months, not years. And not because this is some kind of magic, but because often this is the first time they have been given the language and the tools that actually fit their child. Instead of using a one-size-fits-all, we now have a custom tool set just for your child. And it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. And many of you have been figuring this out without having a manual or a guidebook to help you. It's just not something that we are taught or that we talk about until we get into these situations. Chances are, if your child has had an evaluation for autism or an ADHD diagnosis or any flavor of neurodivergence, it's highly likely that there was a sensory assessment done and you filled out a sensory questionnaire. But also highly likely is that no one ever explained what it meant beyond they process things differently, more than other kids, less than other kids. They're having significant issues in this, but what exactly does that mean? That's the piece that I want to offer you today. What most moms don't know at first is that behavior is sensory at the foundation of it, and you just need the map. Before we get too far into this, I just want to encourage you to do 3 things that are super helpful. One is click follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode in this series, because there's 4 of them and they build on each other. 2, join the weekly newsletter, because I give more sensory tips and background to episodes and more resources in my newsletters. And so I want you in there. If this is helpful for you, or please send it to somebody who needs to hear this. I also host monthly workshops and have new courses that are coming out that are for you. If this podcast is helpful at all for you, or you know someone who would be interested or needs to listen to this, please share it with them. It means so much to me to hear how episodes are helping listeners and their families. I love hearing from people, whether it's a critique, a compliment, or a request for a specific topic. A lot of my episodes, when they're not guest episodes, are coming from my experience working as an OT and working with families. Many, if not all of these sensory strategies that I teach parents and help families with, I also use in my own home. I'm adding my own experience to this. So take with that what you will. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for listening and sharing this. Okay, so back on track. Here's what I wish was common knowledge. We are all sensory creatures, all human beings. In fact, I think you could say all mammals, and maybe even beyond that, but I'm not a biologist or a zoologist. I'm an occupational therapist. Every person is a sensory person. Every kid is a sensory kid. We are all sensory creatures. We all use our sensory system every day, all day long. Many neurodivergent children are processing things so differently from what we expect or anticipate that society often labels it as maladaptive or something to be fixed instead of getting curious. Let's talk about the sensory systems. It's part of our nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord, sensory information is taken in from outside the body and inside the body. It's our vision, what we see, our auditory system, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, touch with our hands and our feet and our mouths and our skin. We have touch receptors everywhere. Some areas have higher concentration than others. But we also have internal senses. So we have the vestibular sense, which helps us, it gives us our sense of balance. It's located in the inner ear. And if you're overly sensitive in the vestibular system, you might easily get motion sickness. Or if you're less sensitive on that system, you might need more activation and love spinning or swinging. Proprioception is our sense of body awareness and movement. It's located in the joints and the muscles. The receptors are located in the joints and the muscles, which explains why children who need more proprioceptive input are crashing and climbing and jumping. If you have a child who tends to be on the other side of that spectrum, have more fearful anxiety around big movements and playgrounds or new environments, they tend to be way more cautious and careful and take longer to learn how to do stairs or climb up on the playground equipment. And then the last one is interoception. So that's the 8th one. And this is our sense of internal cues, like being able to put your hand over your heart and feel your heart rate, and knowing when you're nervous, feeling that heart rate pick up and pace, or identifying the internal cues of hunger or thirst, the need to use the bathroom. It's often why many neurodivergent children struggle with potty training. If they're not picking up that sensation soon enough, it makes it harder to practice that. It's also emotions. It's the brain-body connection in emotions, what our brain is thinking and what our body is feeling, and connecting those two. A lot of times, our children are identifying those things differently because it feels different in their body. When we use standard emotions, sometimes it looks or feels differently in their body than is portrayed mainstream. Being aware there might be some differences, or that they have a much shorter range. They can quickly go from happy and playing to full-blown meltdown. It's hard as a parent to constantly be thinking about and juggling all these things and trying to help our kids be kids when you have all of these things going on that you have no idea of. Or maybe you have some idea of, but you don't have that big picture view and you're in it every day, all day long, trying to figure it out. That's a lot. When we see children who are overwhelmed or shut down or hyperactive or destroying your house because they just cannot regulate their system, it's that they are in overwhelm, or they are seeking a lot of input, or they're avoiding a lot of input, or they're struggling to interpret input accurately. Without that sensory lens, we don't really know what's going on. We also need to take into consideration that some kids are very active at seeking out that input, or they're very passive about getting the input they need or avoiding too much input, meaning they don't often know they are overwhelmed until they are full-blown overwhelmed. And so they need more external supports to help them and have breaks so that they are not constantly bumping up against that threshold or going over that threshold. Their responses are not they're adaptive. They are constantly engaging with the input that's coming in from all angles around them, from their environment and internally.
Hey, Mama. Do you ever dream of a calmer, more joyful life? A life where mornings aren't a struggle, transitions are smooth, and you can actually enjoy time with your child without constantly worrying about them? A life where you would celebrate your child's unique way of experiencing the world instead of trying to change it? I know you love your child fiercely, but sometimes the meltdowns, the sensory sensitivities, and the constant challenges can make it really hard to connect with your child. You're doing everything you can, but you're still searching for answers. You long for stronger connections with your child, a more supportive relationship with your partner, and the ability to balance everyone's needs without guilt. Enough mom guilt. What if you could achieve all of that? What if you had the tools to prevent meltdowns before they happen, to create peaceful routines and confidently support your child's sensory needs? The Sensory Blueprint can help you turn that dream into a reality. It combines a 1-hour intake interview, a thorough sensory assessment, a deep analysis that creates a personalized video review, and a follow-up strategy call with resources and recommendations for you. Imagine understanding the why behind your child's behaviors, building stronger connections, and feeling confident advocating for their unique needs. Imagine your child developing independence at their own pace, social situations becoming more manageable, and your home feeling calmer overall. Imagine enjoying more activities as a family and finally feeling like the parent your child needs you to be. The Sensory Blueprint gives you the clarity and support you need to create a more harmonious and joyful family life. Ready to stop wishing and start living? Click the link in the show notes to learn more about the Sensory Blueprint and finally create the peaceful, connected family you've always wanted. The Sensory Blueprint, because every mom deserves to delight in who her child is and create a thriving family.
And I want you to think of the sensory system like a soundboard. Now, I'm not a musician, so if you are and you know way more about this and what I'm saying doesn't make sense, then please cut me a little grace. But I think of it like this soundboard, right? We have all of these dials that we're adjusting throughout the song to make that song sound good and to be enjoyable. There's different genres of music and different styles of music. So depending on what part of the song we're at or what style of music we're playing or what instruments are engaging, we're going to be adjusting the controls on that soundboard. I want you to think about the sensory system like a soundboard. And as your child is going throughout their day, like the song being played, there's constant adjustment happening of these dials, and volumes are changing, and how sensitive they are to something at one point of the day versus another point of the day is moving. Some children move a lot throughout and have huge fluctuations throughout their day. And other children can be more, this is our range right here. This is where we operate, and we always are in this space. And so if your child is reacting with big emotions or behaviors, a lot of times from an occupational therapy and a sensory perspective, I'm not seeing defiance or outbursts or manipulation. I'm seeing communication of these big feelings that are inside of them. And they're letting us know what feels like too much, or I need more. I need more input, and I'm really struggling to attend. So I have a big reaction to try to activate those systems and to meet those needs. And once we understand that, once we know that, we can start to notice how your child, and then we can model that for them. We can talk about it with them and show them ways they can start to adjust the dials themselves. And then when they become the person who can adjust those dials as they're going throughout their day, it is beautiful. It is profound. And it's so cool to see a child who was once labeled as this or that blossom and light up. That is what I want for our kids. I want to see our kids thrive for who they are, not because they are some genius at this or something of this, like just for being a human being who is worthy and valuable and is your child. Once we understand the sensory system, we can stop managing meltdowns. We can start preventing them. We can support the needs and not just react to behavior. No child wants a meltdown. They don't want to go into meltdown mode. But it's a full system overload that requires a sort of reboot. And once it starts, you often have to let them go through it. You want to keep them safe, obviously, and those around them safe so they can make it out to the other side. But you have to let them go through that process once that threshold has been tipped. Understanding the sensory system and how those things work gives you so much more information as a parent of your neurodivergent child. And that's why I created the Edison Collective, and I'm creating tools like the Clarity Lab to help you start connecting those dots in your own home. I'll have a link in the show notes below for details on the Clarity Lab, but essentially what it is how is the nervous system directing what we are seeing in our kids? And a couple exercises to go through to provide you with that clarity. I had been an OT for nearly 7 years when I had my daughter. I had always wanted to be a mom, and I assumed that with my background, motherhood would come fairly naturally and easily. But when my daughter was born, it became very quickly that she wouldn't sleep unless she was being held. And by day 3, I was crying constantly, and I felt like I was hallucinating from the sleep deprivation. She was only sleeping for about 45 minutes at a time on her own if I wasn't holding her. I'd had a C-section, and I needed physical help to get out of bed, which was something that was completely foreign to me and was incredibly humbling. I felt completely disoriented and confused, and I felt like I wasn't capable of being a mom. Maybe I couldn't do it. Baby wearing and co-sleeping were not choices, but survival. I spiraled hard into postpartum anxiety and depression. We moved shortly after she was born overseas, and we were isolated from family and friends. It was during the pandemic. And I was starting over with a new baby in a new country and learning a new language. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning a new version of me. And that mom that I told you about at the beginning, I was her. I became her. And I was so devastated because I wasn't expecting that at all. It wasn't until my best friend, who also happens to be an OT, gently reflected back to me what she was seeing, and things started to click. She helped me see how my daughter was seeking proprioceptive input, that deep grounding pressure, and how I, in contrast, was craving less stimulation, less tactile input, less auditory input. My nervous system felt like live wires, and my daughter was responding to that. I was stuck in a vicious cycle of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, cycling through all of them multiple times a day. I was constantly scanning, hypervigilant, trying to fix, trying to solve the sleep issue, among other things going on, while her system was simply asking for co-regulation. The state that I was in, the quality of my co-regulation abilities were not very good. And when I had that olive branch extended to me, that shift of recognizing the sensory systems underneath, it changed everything. I knew what I could do. I now had tools that I could use to support. I had a language that I could speak. And when I brought the nervous system informed lens to my own experience, I could finally see what supports I needed to regulate myself and what my daughter needed in order to feel safe. The main goal of this sensory system is to perceive or sense the world around us and to figure out if it is safe. That's the main goal. Understanding the sensory system from inside of motherhood gave me a new perspective and a way forward. And it's why I created tools like the Clarity Lab to start helping you connect those dots in your own home and working. It's why I created the Edison Collective and working with families outside the traditional insurance model so we could better respond and meet the needs of families and their children. One of the things that I love to do in this podcast is a word of encouragement, but also a micro shift. What's one little thing that you can do to start applying these changes or these differences? Think about one of the challenges throughout your day. It doesn't have to be the most challenging, but just pick one thing, maybe something that happens fairly consistently, whether it's getting dressed and dealing with clothing or transitioning out the door, sitting down for a meal. Instead of asking, why is my child doing this? I want you to ask from that sensory perspective of what might their sensory system be trying to tell me right now? And this one question can open up the door to so much more ease and attunement and trust. If you're looking for a place to begin and you're not quite sure, the Clarity Lab is a beautiful first step. It's a DIY, self-paced guide to help you understand the foundations of your child's nervous system, start to observe and recognize patterns using that sensory lens, and start building a rhythm that works for you both. If you're craving more personalized guidance, then I would love to invite you into the Sensory Blueprint. This is a more collaborative, intimate, neuro-affirming roadmap that we kind of developed together using my expertise as the OT, but your expertise as the parent. And together we start to decode your child's unique sensory profile, figure out their neuro-signature, and build rhythms that truly work for your family. Inside the Sensory Blueprint, we walk through your child's sensory systems, map out their sensory needs, and create practical strategies so that your mornings are smoother, transitions are easier, and you have more capacity for authentic connection. It's especially for families who want more support than a self-paced course can offer, but still want flexible, actionable tools. For the month of August, it's on sale. Details are in the show notes below. One thing I want you to remember, though, is that this is not about doing more checklists, more to-do lists. This is about seeing clearly and supporting your child and yourself from this place of curiosity and figuring out how to connect and using that sensory lens to help do that. Understanding the sensory system changed the way I practiced as a therapist. And understanding the sensory system in the new container of motherhood changed the way I live. And living it out with my daughter and seeing how having that unique mother-child dynamic, and especially if you have multiple children, it changes how we parent when we start to recognize our own sensory needs and what it takes for me to be able to respond in the way that I want to her when she's struggling through something. And it has been so fun and rewarding and beautiful to see the changes in both of us. If I've learned anything through this process, it's that clarity creates so much more compassion than I ever imagined. And that curiosity helps foster that sense of, oh, this isn't a reflection of me as a parent. This isn't a reflection of her as a daughter. This is interesting. What could be going on here? And when the families that I work with start to make those shifts and parent from that place, it gets easier and there's more space. And I think that especially in kind of the culture and what is going on around us, that we need this, not just for our kids, but for ourselves. Next week, we're going to explore what survival mode looks like in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, how those show up and what they look like, and how we can start supporting our children if they're stuck in one of those cycles, or how it's showing up in us as the parent and how it's impacting our parenting. And it's one of the most important reframes that we need to do in this work. I'm so glad you're here. I am so excited for what we are going to do together. That's it for this week's episode of The Sensory Savvy Mama. I hope you're walking away with some actionable tips and a renewed sense of hope for your journey. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Your child is amazing, and you are the perfect mom for them. If you loved this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other moms like you find our community and lets us know what you want to hear. If you want to connect further, you can find us on Instagram or subscribe to our newsletter for inspiration, exclusive sensory tips, behind-the-scenes glimpses, and so you don't miss out on any new episodes. We are all in this together, Mama. I love you, and I'm so proud of you. One last thing before we go. While I am an occupational therapist, I am not your child's occupational therapist. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. As the parent, you know your child best. So please use your best judgment and consult with your child's healthcare providers before exploring any of the strategies or ideas shared here. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out.